Summer fun is making a cautious comeback as COVID-19 restrictions ease up in many parts of the world. With the pandemic far from completely over, it's not quite business as usual. But green shoots of recovery are showing, from summer camps in the US to safari parks in East Africa to resorts in the iconic Himalayas. We take a look at how things have improved in the past year and what challenges lie ahead. Kumud Sirohi's international travel agency was booming before the pandemic. She'd opened a new office and had 30 employees working in 2 cities. Then travel ground to a halt. And so did her business. Since the pandemic struck, her revenue has fallen to nearly zero. She'd had to let 80% of her staff go and is at least 3 years away from turning a profit.
It was really difficult and very hard. And still we are struggling with maybe many things, like we are still not out of it.
It's been a bleak year for India's tourism industry, a key pillar of the country's economy. Tourism usually contributes an estimated $270 billion annually to India's GDP. But the government says the tourism sector saw a more than 90% drop in revenue when the pandemic first started. With no sign of international travel picking up anytime soon, Kumud hopes domestic tourists will keep her company afloat. Travelers, she says, are more concerned about their safety than ever before. They are looking for a quick holiday to escape the stress of living under multiple rounds of lockdown, but only if they can minimize the risk of COVID-19 infection. Since May this year, her company has started offering getaways to secluded spots close to nature.
I've seen people getting very happy even sitting on the river bank, They're just sitting there for an hour and it's like what experience,
Demand for such destinations is gradually picking up, but the fear of a third wave and entry restrictions in some states is still holding visitors back. I'm off to an offbeat experience of my own to take a look at how COVID-19 has impacted tourism in one of India's most iconic regions. Just a 6-hour drive from New Delhi will bring you to the foothills of the mighty Himalayas. The state of Uttarakhand is a popular tourist destination among people traveling from the capital. That's where I'm headed. It's home to Jim Corbett National Park, India's oldest wildlife sanctuary, originally set up for the conservation of the Royal Bengal tiger. This forest district usually attracts adventure seekers and families escaping the city heat during the summer. But after the devastating second wave of the coronavirus, entry restrictions have become tougher. A rapid antigen test or an RT-PCR is mandatory for entering this state. At this checkpoint, authorities are carrying out these tests to make sure that travel and tourism can resume safely. Travel deeper into the national park and you get to Matre, a yoga retreat nestled in the foothills of the Himalayas. Days in this remote retreat start early. Joining me at 6 a.m. yoga class is retreat owner Navendu Tripathi and 2 other locals who've decided to drop by for a quick lesson. Navendu thought the personalized yoga classes, meditation sessions and organically grown farm-to-table food would make the retreat a hit with tourists. But so far, that hasn't worked out. There are 6 rooms available, but I'm the only guest staying here at the moment. If it wasn't for the pandemic, at least a dozen other guests would have been joining me here. But for some, the prospect of a third wave is keeping them at bay, while others feel that entry restrictions into this state need to be relaxed even further. It opened 3 years ago, but since the pandemic hit, the retreat has been running at a steep loss. Navendu's had to borrow money from friends and family to keep it running. But that hasn't been enough.
We had to somehow just get through, cutting down on everything possible that was around, letting so many things go, letting so many things break down, just watch it fall apart in front of your eyes, letting so many of the staff go.
Navendu says many of his competitors are in massive debt. Some of them, unable to cope with the plummeting losses, have shuttered for good. Even guides who have been the backbone of the tourism industry here in the Himalayas are suffering. Sanjeev Parodia is a local hiking guide who's been showing tourists around for more than a decade.
कभी भी जब इस तरह के ट्रैक करते हैं तो हमें अपनी नाक, हम अपने कान, अपनी आंखें हमेशा खुली रखनी चाहिए, क्योंकि इस तरह के ट्रैक पे इनसाइड द जंगल हमको कभी-कभी टाइगर भी देखने को मिल सकता है।
Sanjeev tells me that on a trek like this, you can always encounter one of the 200 majestic Royal Bengal tigers in India's oldest national park. On a busy day, more than 300 tourists would come up here. But now, barely a dozen do on any given day. And all of them are from nearby towns. Without international travelers, Sanjeev is having to make do with just 1/10 of his pre-pandemic earnings.
कि हम लोग इंडियन हैं, तो हम लोगों की नीड ज़्यादा रहती है और बजट बहुत स्मॉल, तो इसका बहुत फ़र्क पड़ता है टूरिज्म में। क्योंकि विदेशी क्लाइंट हैं, वो क्या करते हैं, वो लोग प्लान करते हैं इंडिया आने के लिए, अपने दिन प्लान करते हैं, पूरा बजट प्लान करते हैं, उस हिसाब से वो लोग आते हैं। दूसरा करेंसी, हमारा करेंसी छोटा है।
In 2019, nearly 18 million international tourists arrived in India. In the first month of 2021, that number had dropped to less than 400,000. Matre too was hoping to welcome international travelers. But after the Delta variant was discovered in India, flights to and from most countries were suspended and look like they will be for some time. And with memories of India's second wave still fresh, tourists are wary of coming here, at least while the pandemic is still around.
We're pleased that it did get cancelled. We didn't get stuck. Obviously, I'd love to see the healthcare system really be invested in, and to try and see, that really get to a point where it can help more people and stuff.
An estimated 150,000 foreign tourists visited the Himalayan state of Uttarakhand in 2019. Most of them came to experience the region's rich wildlife, its temples and yoga resorts. But now authorities are hoping to lure tourists back with adventure spots. The Uttarakhand government is planning to set up a river rafting center here and plan to open a bungee jumping ramp on top of the cliff. Activities like trekking and hiking are major money spinners for states in the Himalayan region, which is why this state of Uttarakhand is setting up a separate department only for adventure tourism. It wants to bring in more revenue as lockdown restrictions are eased and vaccination rates go up. It's not just international tourists holding back. Even avid adventure seekers living in Delhi would rather wait out the pandemic. Krish Bedi would travel to the Himalayas at least 3 times a year before the pandemic. He'd often spend days trekking through the mountainous terrain. But with authorities sounding the alarm about an imminent third wave, there's only one assurance that will nudge him towards his favorite activity again.
Vaccination. I think the priority needs to be to first vaccinate a significant population so that you feel capable that the healthcare system will be able to sustain. Especially in these states where they know the healthcare infrastructure is not strong enough. I think vaccination is the answer. Once that's done, I feel a little bit more comfortable.
But with just 10% of the country's total population fully vaccinated, Krish's next trip might be some time away. In the meantime, he's keeping himself fit, waiting for travel to become safe again, which looks like it will be an uphill battle.
Summer camps are a quintessential part of growing up in America, a rite of passage for most kids at some point during their childhood. But COVID-19 has put something of a cloud over this summer experience, meaning that this year the freedom of the great outdoors is a little more restricted than usual. Nature in all its glory, without a TV, laptop or mobile phone in sight. Perfect antidote to almost a year of online learning. This is Camp St. Charles, a sleepaway camp on the banks of the Potomac River in Maryland. On the dodgeball court, COVID seems like a faraway concern. The Mullen brothers have brought along 6-year-old William for his first time at camp. What's the best thing that you've done so far this week?
Fishing.
Fishing. Did you catch anything?
Jellyfish.
Whoa, awesome.
Two actually. When I heard that I could be coming to camp this year, I was really excited because it felt like forever since I had gone.
Oh, yes, you do.
It's the 7th summer here for Joey and Jacob Pantuso. They love it so much they travel 14 hours from Wisconsin to come here.
It's just like a whole new family in Maryland again, seeing everybody. It's great being able to have all these activities, being COVID friendly, and just having camp back to normal-ish.
Nice shot.
Normal-ish is the right word. This summer, campers needed to provide proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test, and the usual 2-week sessions were scaled back to a week.
I think kids know that modified camp is better than no camp.
Camp director Laura Hall admits this year, her 27th, has been one of the most challenging.
When you think about a typical day at camp, it's a lot of everybody gathering and mixing and intermingling. That's been kind of part of day-to-day life at camp. So initially it was very hard to imagine any aspect of camp that was going to be COVID friendly, you know.
Laura has reduced the number of children the camp takes in this year, and she split campers up into different batches, which are not allowed to intermingle.
Usually every bunk would be filled, and in this cabin that would be 25 campers. So for this year, it's between 12 and 14 kids of roughly the same age group, and then they're together throughout. They eat meals together, they do activities together, they're the cohort group together.
Oh, it's 35 actually.
Sticking in these cohorts means they can remove their masks, and it minimises risk. A COVID exposure 2 weeks ago sent one cohort of campers home a day early, but allowed the rest of the camp to stay open. In the neighbouring state of Virginia, campers are enjoying adventure activities at Lake Accotink. This camp here is a day camp. Parents drop off their kids in the morning and pick them up in the afternoon. There's no sleeping over, but that also means there's no time to be able to build up those cohorts, meaning that even though we're outdoors, in amongst nature, masks are still a must. My own kids, Ella and Ben, are taking part in this camp, and I wouldn't be doing my job of being an annoying dad if I didn't rope them into telling me what they thought of being back at camp.
It was really nice because I can actually get outside and do things, but I still have to wear a mask, obviously. And I need to be careful of social distancing with other people around if I don't have my mask on.
It's really fun. Yeah, because of last year I kind of missed it. It was pretty boring sitting at home, but now I'm, out and about, camp, and enjoying it.
All right, let's go, let's go.
He's not wrong. Last summer was pretty boring. Camps everywhere were cancelled. And for parents and children alike, that meant trying to fill a 10-week summer break with something to do.
What we can provide with our camps is that, it's an opportunity during the summer for kids to be kids again.
Dan Grolke has helped put together the camp activities and says this year has been an adjustment for everyone.
First week of camp, it was a difficult time. I've been with the county 22 years, and I had never seen camps where campers had to relearn how to get along with each other. And we got to remember that most of the world was isolated socially from each other for a year and a half. And as a result, it took a week and a half for counselors to help campers relearn how to socially interact with each other in a positive manner.
But he says the children have adapted to the differences.
What I feel the most rewarding about having even limited camps is that all the time that the children spend learning and socially interacting with each other in our camps, they will be able to take those lessons back to school in the fall, and it will be easier for them and the teachers who have had a tremendously hard year.
It is our schedule for the afternoon, yes.
But spare a thought for the children and teachers who aren't getting the summer off. It's back to school for some of them. These students have returned to the classrooms of Silverbrook Elementary in Northern Virginia. It's the first time the school has run summer classes. But the extra lessons are necessary after a year of disruption, which saw students learning their letters and numbers online away from proper classroom interaction.
That was the premise of this whole program, was basically to get them back into the building, get them comfortable in the building, get them comfortable with teachers, with staff, get them comfortable in this environment again. We wanted them to have fun here as much as we wanted them to learn some things and strengthen those social emotional skills that are so very important.
The rush to return to normal is underway, with schools in most of the country aiming to reopen fully for the new academic year, and hoping COVID won't once again be a barrier to learning. Whether in classrooms or in the great outdoors, for America's kids, this summer has been a time of learning in different ways how to navigate the changing world around them.
Sunrise in the Serengeti National Park. This famed park is home to the most diverse range of wild animals on the African continent. Tourists used to flock here, hoping to catch a glimpse of animals roaming the vast plains. But in 2020, the parks were emptied of curious onlookers. East Africa's tourism sector came to a standstill, brought to its knees by a microscopic enemy, the COVID-19 virus. The pandemic put a stop to international tourist arrivals, and it caused an estimated $4 billion in lost tourist earnings. For the more than 1 million workers in Tanzania's tourism industry, the past year has been the darkest period of their lives. Prosper Makongo has been battling depression since the pandemic upheaved his life. He's a head chef in one of the Serengeti's leading luxury tented camps. But when the crowds vanished, his earnings dropped by 80%. It was the first time he hadn't been able to provide for his family since he joined the tourism sector over a decade ago.
Msongo wa mawazo lazima ulikuwepo. Kama unavyojua sekta utalii, watu tunategemea kwamba wageni wakiwepo maisha yanakwenda. Hakuna mgeni, hakuna maisha.
Even the celebrated Serengeti, where over 4 million animals from lions to zebras stalk the plains, hasn't been spared. This UNESCO World Heritage Site is considered the 7th wonder of the world, and it's a significant source of revenue for the Tanzanian government. Usually, it pulls in at least $52 million each year.
Inatoa takriban ni asilimia 47 la pato la TANAPA, asilimia 47. Kwa hiyo tunaweza kusema ni karibia nusu ya pato linalochangiwa na TANAPA kwenye pato la taifa.
The Serengeti National Park is managed by the Tanzania National Parks Authority, or TANAPA, a government agency in charge of managing the country's 22 national parks. It normally sees 400,000 visitors a year. In March, April, May, and June of 2020, it received no visitors at all.
For the past 60 years since the organization was formed, this was the first impact. We have experienced other international shocks, but this one was a global shock, but also a shock to the organization.
With no revenue generated, the government injected $90 million into the organization to maintain operations and conservation efforts. Last year, East Africa suffered a 75% decrease in international tourist arrivals, a deep cut to the tourist sector, where foreign travelers usually make up 70% of revenue.
We were doing 1.5 million tourists per annum. That's 2019. But comes 2020, we were below half that one.
But the tide has started shifting, slowly but surely. The global COVID-19 vaccination drive has sparked a revival in Tanzania's tourism industry as international tourists make a cautious return. Tanzania was one of the earliest countries to reopen its borders for international tourists in May 2020. Upon arrival, visitors have to present a 72-hour negative PCR test. They are also required to do a rapid test at the airport.
However, despite the industry lagging, the numbers are higher than 2020 due to the global vaccine rollout.
The Bank of Tanzania said the service receipts increased to 189 million in May 2021 compared to 109 million last year, but is still well below the pre-pandemic levels. Pakistani national Masoon Alvi knew the first place he wanted to travel to after he and his family were vaccinated was Tanzania. They were eager to escape the city after long months of lockdown and spend a few days out in the wilderness.
We are 17 people and we are friends and families.
As Tanzania tries to woo tourists back, the big focus is on safety first. The Tanzanian government, the Tour Operators Association, and the UN have set up 2 COVID-19 testing centers in the Serengeti National Park.
It's important to have one here because we need to do it like 72 hours before our flight, and our flight is the day after tomorrow. So we need it to be ready well in advance. So it's important that there is a facility here, and it was very, very well done.
Tanzania kicked off its nationwide vaccination drive about a month ago, but take-up is still slow. Right now, less than 10% of the Tanzanian population is vaccinated, a number the authorities hope to increase significantly to help put tourists at ease.
Mgeni alikuwa na demandi yule agent ambaye anampokea awe amepata chanjo. Walikuwa wanakataa kuhudumiwa na watu ambao hawajapata chanjo.
Tanzania is hoping its vaccination push will help restore its tourism industry to its former glory. After all, it boasts some sought-after experiences, like the Great Migration, which usually takes place from July to August, bringing in peak tourist numbers. The largest land-based wildlife migration on Earth takes place here in northern Tanzania every year. 1.5 million wildebeest loop clockwise from the Serengeti National Park to the Masai Mara Reserve in Kenya. It is a key tourist hotspot, generating millions of dollars for both countries each year. Nature consultant and guide Ngorongo hopes to see tourists making a great migration back to Tanzania. The sight of some returning has already given him hope that the tourism sector is on the road to recovery.
We are now living a life, but last year we were just surviving, but now at least we are living. That simply means we have something to put on our table.
While international travel makes a slow return, experts say it's critical for the African continent to do more to promote domestic and intra-Africa tourism.
We are now thinking of using Air Tanzania to connect other African countries so that we can stimulate African or regional tourism to bring more tourists to Tanzania, and also Tanzanians to go to other tourist destinations within Africa.
Nature's law of survival of the fittest has never rung more true than it has over the past 2 years. The tourism sector in East Africa had to fight to survive as a pandemic crippled international travel, and it will have to continue to fight to win tourists back, coming up with new and creative ways to move forward.